Welcome to Porch Talks, and thank you for joining me on this journey together towards more spiritual and emotional well-being. In my journey, I've found that understanding how I am designed physically and how my brain is wired has helped me tremendously in navigating my own emotional well-being. And so today I'd like to share a little demonstration with you about how our brains are wired, and in that understanding, how we can, through that awareness, have more control or partnership with ourselves, our bodies, our brains, our emotions, that will lend itself to more well-being. And so I'd like to begin with this little demonstration. If you make a 4 and you put your fingers over your thumb, this is a little simple model of your brain. And there are a couple of parts I want to point out with this first video that will be the basis for journeying together towards greater well-being. And we'll begin down here in the human brain. This part of the brain is called the brainstem. And in the brainstem is where we have the sense of whether we're safe or not. So this and all the chemicals related to safety, such as adrenaline and cortisol, originate here in the brainstem, and when we're feeling unsafe, initiate the process of fight, flight, or freeze that you may be familiar with. This is also called the lizard brain because we have this in common with reptiles. Now, over to this part of the brain, tucked in under here, the thumb, is called the limbic system. And this is where our emotions, the chemicals and signals related to our emotional lives live, such as happiness, loneliness, grief, all the emotions that we experience. We have this in common with mammals, so it's often called the mammalian brain or the mouse brain. Now, overlying that, right here up front, which would be right here, is called the prefrontal cortex. And this is where the functions of problem solving and creativity lie. This is where we become curious. This part of the brain is activated, and these three segments of the brain that I'm pointing out very simplistically help us understand what happens when we're in a state of overwhelm. Emotionally overwhelmed can be anger, can be overwhelming grief, or anxiety, anything that overwhelms emotionally our well-being in a negative way or in a challenging way. So what happens in a state of overwhelm is that chemicals are released in the brain, like I said, cortisol, adrenaline, and so on, that actually disconnect our ability to think and creatively solve problems. And when that happens, we flip our lid like this. We've disconnected our ability to think clearly. And this flipping the lid state is this state of overwhelm, which is not the time to be engaging in problem solving and creative processes. So, what do we do in this state of overwhelm? How can we get back to engaging our ability to think clearly when we're emotionally overwhelmed? Well, in subsequent videos, we'll talk about how we can um, work with this state of flipping the lid in different scenarios with children or on the job or in relationships that will help us calm the brain state that we're in and re-engage our ability to think and problem solve. But just briefly, chemicals have rushed into the brain and have disconnected that, and now we're not really communicating clearly what we need to move forward in a situation, and this is not the time to be trying to figure out what to do to solve our problems or to solve an issue with a child who has also flipped their lid or throwing a tantrum, for instance, or a boss who is angry. That is not the time to do that. And there are several things that we can do to calm and soothe the brain to bring it back to this state. So I'd like to leave you with mostly the important focus of when in a flipped out brain state, most important is to soothe your own brain back into connection and ability to solve your problems before trying to work with someone else who may also be in a flipped out brain state like this. So you've heard the saying, put on your own face mask first. And that is the quickest way to getting back to knowing how to move out of flipped out states where two people are like this, perhaps. And the quickest way that I can offer right now in this video is what I call a brainwash. A brainwash is very simply 3 slow, deep breaths. What happens when you begin to breathe is you wash out the stress chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, and that washes them out and allows the chemicals related to well-being and focus to re-engage the thinking and problem-solving part of the brain, which are dopamine and norepinephrine, serotonin, and so on, so that you can think and focus clearly again on how to solve your problem. So, in summary, this is your brain, this is a state of overwhelm, and your quickest way is just take 3 slow, deep breaths. We'll explore other ways in upcoming videos, as I said, but I want to leave you with that, and let me know how that resonates, or if you've experienced those kinds of overwhelming feelings, what you've done in that situation, or what you have tried now that you know that a flipped out brain cannot solve problems, and what techniques you may have developed to return to this calm, focused, problem-solving brain state. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to traveling together again with you on this journey to emotional and spiritual well-being.